assuming the asker of the question has been reading some of our early brethren's writings where they refer to the Assyrio-Russian, or one of my favourite phrases, the autocrat of all the Russias, and so on, because that's some of the phrases that we find. So what we want to say is it when we find all these references to Assyria in Scripture, coming down, taking away Israel and so on, is there a latter-day application? There are many passages we could look at, but I think there's a couple that can put a cap on it for us and show that we can, Isaiah 10 being one of them. So of course we have a lot in Scripture about the Assyrian coming down according to the will of God to bring judgment upon Samaria and so on. And Babylon later came down to bring judgment upon Jerusalem. Babylon is mentioned in the book of Revelation, specifically we can show relation to Europe. But what about Assyria? Can that be related to Russia? A latter day coming down into the land? Well, Isaiah 10 is perhaps one of those passages which shows that Assyria is mentioned in passages which must be speaking of the latter day. So Isaiah 10, let's look at verse 12. Wherefore it shall come to pass that when the Lord hath performed his whole work upon Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, I will punish the fruit of the stout heart of the king of Assyria and the glory of his high looks. Now this is really talking about a latter day. The whole work is completed on Mount Zion and Jerusalem, and the king of Assyria will be punished. Who is the king of Assyria? Who will have come down? Verse 5 of Isaiah 10. O Assyrian, the rod of mine anger. And just as God has always used the kings of the earth as his servants, so Cyrus my servant, so he will use the latter day Assyrian as the rod of his anger and staff in their hand in my indignation. So this is a latter day passage. We can prove that by looking at verses 20 and 21 of Isaiah 10. It's in this context. And it shall come to pass in that day, the remnant of Israel and such that escape to the house of Jacob shall no more again stay upon him that smote them, but shall stay upon the Lord, or Yahweh, the Holy One of Israel. The remnant shall return, even the remnant of Jacob and the mighty gods. The context is clearly latter day, when the whole work is accomplished, and at that time the stout heart of this latter day king of Assyria will be dealt with. Let's have a look at Isaiah 27, just to pick out some of the strongest passages of the many we could go to. Isaiah 27, verse 13, it says here that it shall come to pass in that day, and we know that's a phrase often referred to in the last days. It shall come to pass in that day that the great trumpet shall be blown, and they shall come which are ready to perish in the land of Assyria, and the outcasts in the land of Egypt, and shall worship the Lord in the holy mount at Jerusalem. That's clearly got a latter day application, and it's seeming to suggest that God's people who are ready to perish, perhaps taken away as outcasts in the land of Assyria. So those are two kind of concrete verses that we can start to get a feel for. Assyria does have a latter day application. Why else have Christadelphians thought about it? Daniel chapter 7. We find that the animals that are found in Daniel chapter 7, which is the first one that comes along, that represents Babylon. It is a lion. But what does Daniel chapter 7 say about that lion? First was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth. So there was a transition from, the winged lion of Assyria and so on, and the lion of Babylon. And so there's that transition between the two. The last point I wanted to make is that if you look at the map of the ancient civilization of the Assyrians, it covered right up into Turkey. And into that kind of edge of Europe. Brethren and sisters have long looked at Revelation 16, where it says about the drying up of the river Euphrates and the northern power mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and other passages coming down and taking up that Euphrates power, the Turkish power. And that, of course, is the same land as ancient Assyria. So there is a direct link, both in prophetic terms and in the land in which they will own. That has led some to say that there is a Assyria-Russia kind of link that we can look for in Scripture.